Angela, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Eric. It's really great to be here. I'm excited to have a great conversation today.
Me too. So I think we can start with some historical context. First and foremost, I've known of you for a long time. We've known each other for a couple of years, but you've known my father for a lot longer than that. How did you get into this crazy profession of chiropractic? Where did you come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it all started, I was 14 and I went to a chiropractor, like many sports athletes would.
Yeah.
My whole family or most of my family gets adjusted. So it was just common in my family. That's just what we did.
Okay.
I ended up in college, one of those summers off working for my chiropractor, who became a great friend of mine. And, funny enough, she took me to a Parker seminar in 1998 in St. Louis.
And I have ran into you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe. Yeah. I just loved, I didn't know anyone, but I walked up, with her and everyone was just so warm and welcoming and loving. Everyone gave me hugs and just was really excited to see me, even though I was new.
Right.
And then she had me listen to Sigafus. And so, pretty much after that.
The rest is history.
Yeah, I was hooked. So, it started there and I just loved the people and the profession. After college, I worked for CLA for a couple years, selling a station. It's where I met your dad and all the greats in the profession. Moved around a bit, met my now ex-husband, and he's a chiropractor. He had a clinic in Phoenix.
Okay.
So joined his clinic, ran that for 5 years. We purchased a clinic, so we had 2. Then we decided to move to Chicago, have a family. So then we did that, and then I helped him open a clinic downtown Chicago. And around the same time, I started at ChiroTouch. So started working there again, worked more closely with your dad and your family. So I was at ChiroTouch 10 years, marketing, business development, really all the heydays of ChiroTouch.
Yeah.
And then he opened a second clinic here in Chicago. So then we had 2 clinics in Chicagoland. Then after leaving ChiroTouch, I went to Chiro One, as you know very well, right?
Yep.
They're a national brand. And
shout out to Sam and the team.
That's right. Yeah. I had to stay in this profession, and Chiro One was close to me geographically, and you were doing acquisitions, and that sounded really fun and interesting. Mm-hmm. I was there 4 years, left there and took some time because I had some personal stuff going on, and then, joined Curis Functional Health about halfway through this year, doing acquisitions and mergers again with chiropractic clinics. So you can't get rid of me. I'm here. It's been over 25 years. I'm not going anywhere. I actually just saw your dad and your brother over the weekend. So.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So we're going to segue into exit planning, which is your specialty. But before we get there, I'm going to circle back. You were 14. You saw the first chiropractor. How did your family know about chiropractic? How did they get involved? You were an athlete, you said. What did you play? What did you practice? Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. So at the time I was in volleyball and track, but at the time when I first went, it was volleyball season and my low back hurt, that was it. I was doing push-ups and I said, gosh, my low back hurts. And I showed my dad and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? He's like, nothing. You should go see the chiropractor. I mean, literally that was his response. It was pretty great. My parents get adjusted. My brothers, my grandma and grandpa were getting adjusted. So
it went way back.
Yeah, it did. I grew up in a small town of 100. And so there's a lot of...
Where was that?
Central Illinois.
Okay. Got it.
Hour and a half southwest of Chicago.
Yeah.
So a lot of small towns, and there are a couple, really great chiropractors, Gonstead docs. And it's, my grandpa and my family were farmers and truck drivers, right? And everyone needs chiropractic, but, it's pretty manual. So they just always went. And that was just it. My mom got into a car accident when she was 16. And, she said her stomach was kind of messed up. And she went to the chiropractor and that was the only thing that helped. So
I love that story. It is a common one. It has, now being in the profession for so long.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is the profession was built on experiences like that, and it still is. What we call the modern day miracles, when people are in auto accidents or are having an issue that's chronic in nature and can't figure out a way out, and then they go to the chiropractor, then all of a sudden they're better. And so that's amazing. But now, and I'm pushing towards the inflection point where we're at in the profession, where we're growing rapidly. But how do we get people into the profession, or how do we get that message across to people without necessarily having that direct experience or the family connections, at 14, I was a volleyball player, they fixed me, that sort of thing? How do we get that message across without putting them through that experience? Have you thought about that?
Oh,
I think about it every day.
Yeah, right. A lot. I think it's a really great question. And, having a marketing mind, I think about the difference between pull marketing and push marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the push marketing is go do this and you'll get X result. The pull marketing is what the pharmaceutical companies have become masters at, right? It's go ask your doctor if the purple pill will help you.
Right.
Right. And it's that intrigue, it's that pull to ask the question, to wonder, and I think it's direct to consumer marketing, to be honest. I think chiropractic should be a pull. There should be a direct to consumer marketing, which I know that the foundation does some of that for sure.
Right,
but
right.
I think there's not only direct to consumer for the patient perspective, but also a campaign that is direct to consumer for potential students. What it's like to be a chiropractor. This is, helping people in a drug-free environment. This is, a great way you can have a work-life balance, right? And really targeting those people about almost like a day in the life of a chiropractor. Yeah. I really think that that's the pull. I also think that, as a profession, as we move towards understanding the data that we're gathering, I think that will be very exciting. I think data speaks very loudly. And when we can really start to pull that together, which I know is happening, I know some of the leaders of the profession are doing that right now. I think we'll have, some different interests that I'm hopeful for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's so funny and ironic how timing works because, as some of our listeners will know, I literally just put out an email on Friday about the appointment or the nomination of Bobby Kennedy to the HHS. Yeah. And we're at such an interesting point politically, culturally, that there's clearly a demand for alternative forms of healthcare. People are sick of being sick, no pun intended. And I think we're going to see, hopefully, a lot of interesting changes over the next 4 years societally, especially in the US. And that directly relates to chiropractic and the demand for it, people becoming chiropractors. Hopefully we'll have some more financial incentives aligned to make that happen for both of our sakes.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I read a report over the weekend, this local group that I'm a part of, and they do industry surveys, right? Yeah. Industry research. And I was reading the one on the chiropractic profession. And they're reporting that chiropractic is only almost a $21 billion industry.
Yeah. And that was IBIS World, right? I think somebody mentioned that.
Yeah. And that it just caught me for a minute. Like, wow, I don't think we realize, okay, great. It's small in comparison to, the $1 trillion healthcare industry, but $21 billion is not nothing small. And sometimes we can think small, right? Because we're in our own business and we're doing everything ourselves, right? But it really is $21 billion is a lot. And it also said 180,000 employees.
Yeah.
That's great. And
right.
The report said that people, even though the economy has been the way it's been, and, people are making different spending choices, that people still continue to see the chiropractor and even pay out of pocket. There's a trend of paying more out of pocket, as we know, deductible higher and so forth. And so it was confirming that people find validation and value in chiropractic care, because when they have to make decisions on out of pocket dollars, if they're spending that at their chiropractor, that's amazing.
Right.
I think that's really powerful.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, the one thing you can't really make cuts on is your health. And I think people really understand that. And it kind of goes into the whole inflection point where we're at, that chiropractic is turning into a much bigger profession and a much bigger industry, as you highlighted astutely. And, we're seeing investments from PE groups, a lot of consolidation, your group doing that and being some of the leaders in that. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely rearing its head that we're not going anywhere. You and I get to see it more from a 20,000 foot view than others. The people that are in it at clinics, CAs, et cetera, you're right. It's so hard to know and see the big picture because we're so dispersed across, a large geographical area. We're worldwide now, and most countries are getting licensing boards to manage chiropractors, which is great, especially in the US. There's a history of just mom and pop clinics, and that's changing. The Chiro Ones of the world, the health sources of the world, the joints of the world, they're growing rapidly, and we're becoming a much more steady and cash flowing type of business that we haven't seen before, which is really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, and the Curises of the world, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's do. So I think it's exciting. I think the financial world has wanted to invest in chiropractic for a long time, but because of the dispersedness of it, they just didn't know how to.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I was at Chiro Touch when the first private equity group purchased Chiro Touch. Yeah. And that was the first in the profession. It was the first outside money investing in the profession. We've seen it now a bit more. There's been, as you mentioned, several other private equity companies, investment companies, invest in different, organizations and growth and so forth, different ways. But I think that's validation that, again, to your point, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
I mean, they certainly would not invest the money if they didn't think that they were going to get a return on investment, right? So I think that's very encouraging. I think, as you mentioned, some of those companies and even ours, consolidation is happening, and I genuinely believe it's a great thing for our profession. I think that we should let the doctors be the doctor. I think it's just, having run my ex-husband's chiropractic offices, it's just, I genuinely feel like it's unfair to put all of that, all the different hats, all the burden, all of it on the chiropractor. Yeah. There's the business, there's the staff, there's the patients, and
documentation.
It's YIPA. It's honestly, that's why I think consolidation is right for the profession and for doctors, because I think, gosh, let some of these companies and kind of corporate structures offload some of that stuff. Compliance and billing. And we know you hate it, right? Totally. Just worry about marketing. We know you're not good at it, and you don't want to get good at it. You just want to treat patients and deliver excellent patient care. That's what I want too as a patient, know?
Yeah. And I mean, through Chiro Jobs, we've been really making a huge effort to re-educate the profession on some of these factors. As you well know, the profession was built on the mom and pop clinics like we talked about. And that was the emphasis in school, that coming out of school, you should go open your own clinic and go see the patients in your hometown or wherever you want to go and, make it work. That's how it was built, by necessity. And I get that. But now, where that doesn't make sense, I'm telling the students I talk to on, a weekly basis that it would be crazy to go out and start your own clinic when you have $250,000 of student loans to pay off. You have all of these things to focus on. Why would you want to make your life that crazy to start your own business, start your own clinic, bring patients in, rather than going to a Curis or a Chiro One or a model that already works, that has figured it out? You can learn how to create your business from within. And then if you feel that need, once you're financially stable, your, family life, whatever is stable, go out and do it. Or, buy a franchise from 100% or Health Source or whatever, the joint. And those options are available, but it no longer makes sense to me unless you have some crazy background in successful business, which is rare and not likely. But it makes no sense to me that students coming out of school don't get an associateship.
No, I agree with you completely. I agree with you completely. They just don't even know what they don't know.
Right.
And I think that it makes sense for them to come out almost like in the medical field, like in a fellowship or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
For a couple years and just get there
and learn the real life. Yeah. And even on the employer side, there's still disconnects. There's employers that I have to actively push away from hiring because they want to pay them 45, 50 grand in the middle of nowhere. You can't live on that. And you got to make sense of what you're actually doing, what you're offering, and the demand for the sake of associates. The leverage is with them. There's more open positions than there are associates. And when that happens, the associates can make whatever demands they really want. They don't realize it yet. So hush, hush, employers, figure it out. The leverage is with them. So the point is, I'm trying to make sure that both sides understand the dynamics we're in now. And that directly leads into you, because you're educating people on this exit planning. What's that about? Why is it the hottest topic in the profession right now? And how do people get their heads on straight so they can be prepared for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's really great. And I genuinely think it's the hottest conversation that no one's having.
Yeah.
Right. It's one of those things that college students get out and they're focused on growing their business, starting their business, whatever that is. Then you get into business and it's still about growing the business, maintaining the business. You get kind of into a rhythm. And no one is talking about what's next.
Right.
No one talks about preparing your business for the time when an exit is going to occur. And it's, listen, an exit's going to happen no matter what, right? On the business for all of us, right? We're not going to make it out of this world alive, right? And neither is our business. So, I talked to so many chiropractors over the last 6 years that have just waited too long. Their identity is wrapped in their clinic. It's what they love to do. It's literally, their entire life, right?
Yep.
It's their brand a lot of times.
Which is why they name it after themselves oftentimes.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And then, they don't know what's next. So I think that's a huge conversation that we need to start having for these chiropractors. I can't tell you how many I've talked to that were mid-50s that have brought associates in and love chiropractic. They love adjusting. They just don't want all of the everything anymore. They don't want to deal with all the regulation, all the billing, all the staff, all the headaches of running a business. But they don't want to leave the profession and they don't know what's next, right? And they're kind of in this limbo place of that. And so what I'm trying to do is raise awareness, raise the conversation, have these conversations to say, docs, please start thinking about it earlier. Please start thinking about it 5-10 years ahead of time, because there are so many things that you can do over time and get in place. And so that when the time is right and the buyer is right, you and the business are ready.
Right.
And that's really what I think is important. And I think people just wait too long.
Yeah. I've seen the exact same thing. I view it kind of like a bell curve where the doctor starts off, they build their practice, they're at peak successfulness with their practice, they're making a lot of money, they love it. And then you reach that point where all of a sudden, I don't like doing this every day anymore. I don't want to employ people. I don't want to take care of billing, like you were saying. And then once they reach the bottom, that's when they say, oh, maybe I should start thinking about selling the clinic, when it's at its lowest point. So,
yeah, and it's so hard from a valuation perspective because unfortunately we have to value a business in the current present moment.
Exactly. And sometimes in the future looking, because the numbers don't lie. And what are the trends? And
what are the trends?
Are you building or are you falling? And, that's really important. So how do you, and Curis look at those things? What are you seeing in terms of the market right now? What types of clinics are you looking to, bring on so people know what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So one of the things I love about Curis is that it's not a cookie cutter model, right? So there is, the doctor has the ability to, have the autonomy, I should say, in their clinic to treat the patients they want. So from a patient care perspective, our foundation revolves around chiropractic, weight loss, nutrition, and then mental health. So that's new to chiropractic, and it's what I love. We all know, in the last 5 years, how important mental health has become.
Right.
So incorporating that into a chiropractic clinic just, to me, makes a ton of sense. It's treating the patient more holistically, and it addresses, thoughts, traumas, and toxins, right? So it addresses the foundation of chiropractic. And so within that, the clinics can still be different. So we put the foundational piece in, we want that to be the same, but if there's variances, right? So if you have decompression in your clinic and I don't, or we do acupuncture and you don't, we keep that. What's right for your clinic, your patients, your market, and we want to keep things the same while adding in new things like mental health and potentially weight loss and nutrition if that's not already there.
Yeah.
So that's the clinical model piece of it. The business model is also very unique. When we acquire clinics, we merge them in to Curis. So it's really unique in that when we bring a clinic in, the doctor becomes a partner. So literally every single person in the company has shares in Curis, and we are all vested and interested in everyone succeeding.
Right.
So it's really a cool atmosphere to be in because we want the clinics to grow. We want to be more efficient with our expenses and with, things like that. We want to generally run a better business on behalf of our business, but also the patient, the chiropractor and the patient as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love that model because really incentives align and everyone's pushing in the right direction versus other models of investment or buyout. You see oftentimes once the buyout occurs, the doctor or the previous owner is like, yeah, I got my paycheck. Now I don't care anymore. And then, everything goes downhill.
Yeah. I've been in a couple different models and it's tricky. I mean, it's tricky because you're combining cultures. And even though we are all in this amazing profession together, we speak a little bit of a different language sometimes, and our cultures are different in our clinics. So it's figuring that out too. And sometimes it's a little bumpy, let's be honest. But genuinely, we're all in it to help each other better and grow. And really, we have some pretty lofty goals. Our target is to be the first $1 billion chiropractic company. So in order to do that, we have to be rowing in the same direction.
Totally. So, yeah. So speaking of that, when a clinic is maybe looking to be acquired or you are targeting a clinic, let's just say Hoffman Chiropractic. I have myself a chiropractor, even though I'm not one, an acupuncturist, et cetera, et cetera. What sorts of things do you look at when we get together in terms of, P&Ls, financial statements, et cetera? What are the most important data points that I should be aware of as a clinic owner that I need to start prepping for or make sure my records are clear and clean so that it's an easy process of due diligence and acquisition?
Yeah. So in our model, the first and foremost thing we look for is, would this person be a great partner? Because
personality and cultural fit first.
That's right. Yeah. Because it's a part, like I said, we're merging clinics in and we need the doctors to stay. Right. So that's one interesting point of conversation I have often as well is, okay, well, we buy you and we merge you in, you have to stay because without you, there's no business. Right.
Exactly.
So we want to talk to docs that, are a few years out, right? That want to stay at least 2, 3, 4, even 10 years, but they just don't want all the business side. So, personality and partner is first. Would they make a good partner? Secondly, we look at clinics to see if we can grow them, right? So that's really important to us as well. I mean, if we're going to be a good partner, we have to know that we can provide value to the chiropractor. And that value would come in, resources, growth, efficiency, those types of things.
Right.
And in saying that, yes, financials is incredibly important for us, right? It's show me your profit and loss statements for the last 2 and 3 years, right? Let's talk about your KPIs. Let's talk about how many new patients are you getting on average? Where are they coming from? What's your dollar visit average, right? Those types of metrics that we can look at from a business and say, okay, we could help here. We can help here.
Right.
And then of course, just a conversation about, tell me about your clinic, right? Is like, some clinics aren't a good fit. There's lots of different reasons. Those are the primary things we look for.
And so when I think about, evaluating a business or a clinic, there's always talk about multiples of something. Is there any specific valuation standards in the profession? Because I've heard so many things across the board. Is it a multiple of their last year's revenue? Is it a multiple of their EBITDA? Even though a lot of chiropractors wouldn't even know what EBITDA is. But, what specifically, I guess, does Curis look at when they're valuing a potential clinic? Or is it just so unique to each individual clinic that it really depends, like you said, mostly first on the personality and whether or not there are opportunities to be had?
Listen, there's several different ways to value a clinic. It's kind of like the old story of go to 5 different chiropractors and they'll tell you
if exactly
recommendation. It's similar. So there's different ways to look at it. Yes, some look at it as a multiple of revenue, although we don't think that's an accurate viewpoint of what it is. I mean, we know that if a doctor sells and then leaves, we know that the revenue is going to drop 25, probably 50%.
Yeah.
So if you can't really look at that because it's so personality driven. If you look at some of the brokers and just having conversations with them, how they look at it and discuss it, just high level, many look at sellers' discretionary earnings, right? So how much did they make? What kind of perks are they running through their business? Is it their car? Is it their cell phone? Those kinds of things. What does that seller's discretionary earnings look like? And then it's a multiple of that. So I've heard anywhere from 0.8 to 1.6 on that. So, easy numbers. If seller's discretionary earnings is 100,000, that range means that the clinic could sell for anywhere from 80,000 to 160,000.
Right.
So unfortunately, it's not much, right? And other companies do it as a multiple of, like you said, EBITDA or net profit, right? So there's a couple different ways to look at it. It's not as valuable as I am certain most doctors would love it to be.
Yeah. We're not in the tech world. It's not 20 times revenue.
Right. And I just, 20, 30 years ago, and back to your point about, being mom and pop shops, right? The trajectory then was, okay, I'm going to hire some young buck who comes out of college and they're going to, buy my practice, favorite condom or whatever. But that's not happening. And it's not happening also because of what you said. We now have big corporations in the profession. We have Chiro One, The Joint, Curis. We have several different bigger companies that are looking for doctors. So there's genuinely more opportunity now than there was 20 and 30 years ago. So it's important for a doctor to know that and think about that when they're thinking about what does an exit look like, or when should I start thinking about an exit. It's very different. And I hope that they're not planning to retire on our clinic. Again, this is a conversation I have is, they're hoping to sell their clinic and retire on that money. And for most, it's not going to be.
Not in the cards. Yeah, I unfortunately get to see that often on my Chiro side of things. We get calls from doctors who are saying, hey, I'm not going to need my policy anymore because I'm retiring. I'm like, okay, what's going on with the clinic? Are you selling it? Are you closing the doors? I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, well, maybe let's talk about that.
And honestly, that's where my passion is, because I see Facebook posts all the time of chiropractors selling their equipment after 25 years. They're just closing the doors. I mean, even personally, my ex-husband and I closed the doors of his Venus clinic. And I can tell you, it hurts. Like, it hurts. You really lose the value that you tried to build.
Mm-hmm.
And saying that, if you haven't done a good job of making, of transitioning from having a great job for yourself in creating a business that has some sort of transferable assets, then unfortunately that's probably what the result will be.
Yeah. So let's circle back. So if, let's say we're talking to somebody who's a few years into their clinic, they're in building mode right now, what should that person be thinking about in terms of an exit strategy, exit planning today, so that they set themselves up for success down the road?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could join Curis and we could help them build faster, right? We can go faster. That would be one option.
Yeah. Maybe the best option.
Right. Selfishly. Yeah.
Right. We're all biased. That's okay.
Right. It's okay. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
So, what they can generally do is process and procedure is really important, right? So they have to document process and procedure. I know that we don't love that, but the business side of things, right? How do you handle answering the phones? How do you handle payment? All those things matter. Your people matter. Your human capital matters, right? So you really want to get the right people into your clinic, because they're seeing the patients. It also keeps the business stable. You want to think about decentralizing yourself. So that's a big thing in the business world, right? Is not being the center of everything. So not being the one answering the phone, doing the marketing, doing the billing, doing the patient, So look at all the activities, make a list of all the activities that you're doing, that the doctor's doing, and then ask yourself, okay, do I have to open the mail, right? Or can someone open the mail for me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those simple things. Do I have to do the marketing? Can I outsource that? Can I train someone to do that? And really look at those things and say, and decentralize yourself and get help, right? Whether that's a staff member or outsource it or joining a group, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a strong belief that in high school and or college, if there is one course teaching you how to delegate properly, that would solve so many business problems down the road. I find that to be the number one mistake anybody in business makes long term, is the inability to properly delegate tasks and things to do.
I literally just had a call yesterday, and the woman was talking about how she's a one-man show, right? One-woman show, and she's literally answering her own phone and scheduling. She said, I had to pull over on the side of the road to schedule an appointment.
Yeah.
And I just went on vacation. This one hit me the most. She said, I just went on my vacation with my 16-year-old daughter. And at the end, she looked at me and said, you promised me you wouldn't be working the whole time.
All right. That's the worst.
On the phone the whole time.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, what a dagger to the heart, right?
No, as a parent, that would kill me.
Right? And I just said to her, I said, you have to start to loosen the reins some. Right. You have to, because, your life.
I think you and I are probably similar in this capacity, but one way that I think about it that others might find useful is when I delegate, my expectation is that the person I delegate to will be able to do maybe 60 to 80% as well as I do something. And that's okay. If I can get one person to do 60 to 80%, wonderful. If I can get the next person to do 60 to 80%, it's already 1.5 times what I can do. So if you think about it in that way, because all of us are egomaniacs, nobody who says otherwise is telling the truth. But I know what I can do, and I know how efficient I can be, but I can't be everywhere. And so you have to accept the, lesser productivity at first, and maybe you'll hit the jackpot and find somebody who's incredible who can do 150% of what you can do. Who knows? But if you start with that expectation, I think you set yourself up for success versus failure. Because a lot of people see, oh, you made a mistake here. I would have done that perfectly. Well, yeah, no shit, you would have, because you've been doing it for 10 years, but they've been doing it for 10 minutes. So cut some slack. So
that was exactly what I told her, literally word for word. I said, listen, no one's going to do it exactly the same way as you would do it. And you have to let go of some of that control so that you can have the life that you want to have.
And it's funny how it presents itself. I'm working with a clinic in California right now who we're recruiting some team members for, and they came to me at the Life West conference a couple months ago, and they said, "Listen, we have a problem. It's a good problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. We're seeing about 500 patients a week. It's just my husband and I, and we can't take a vacation. We can't leave the clinic. We tried to bring on an associate years ago. It was a nightmare, didn't work out. And now we're slaves to our own success. And so what do we do? And so we're helping them find great associates so they can finally start delegating. But it is a process for them. And I warn them up front that you need to be prepared that this isn't going to be an immediate fix. You're going to spend, 12 months figuring this out until you loosen up a bit and have the comfort to be able to delegate and have yourselves outside of the clinic for a couple of weeks while your associate takes care of things. So it's...
And the clinic might dip for
exactly.
While
that's okay.
And at the same time, they're getting recharged. They're getting that break. They're getting that time together. They're, literally enjoying some of life. And so that in itself will come back and have such a positive impact on the clinic.
Yeah. So back to the exit strategy, in your experience, what would you say are maybe top 2 biggest mistakes people make in this process that really has set them up for failure down the road?
Well, they don't plan.
Yeah.
that's number one.
Yeah.
Literally number one is they haven't thought about it. They don't plan one and in that planning, which is what we've talked about before, is having your financials put together, right? It is astounding to me how many chiropractors have no idea what their financials are. It's really scary to me.
Yeah.
They don't. So I think, number one is they don't plan for it. That's the biggest mistake they make. And then, let's see, what's the other? Oh, the other one was they wait too long.
Yeah.
Generally, it's, I can't, every week, I just say to docs, I can't help you because I don't have, we're not like the Army Reserves. I don't have chiropractors waiting to go in, right? That I can they're just waiting for a clinic. So they just wait too long and then they just want to be done, right? They want to be done in 2 months or 3 months or tomorrow, whatever it is. And I just can't help them at that point because it takes time. And so, begin thinking about it and planning earlier. And I'd love to see chiropractors do this. I posed this question on Facebook the other day. I genuinely think if we did a better job of setting up our businesses to be transferable and the doctor starts working a couple years ahead of time, decentralizing themselves, then, it would be easier for new grads or younger docs to come in and transition in instead of starting their own business and taking on all that capital and all that risk, right? I think in general, it would be an easier transition from those that want to exit and those that want to enter.
Right. I couldn't agree more. So with your position now, obviously you're newer with Curis, but what's your number one focus, I guess, on a day-to-day basis? Are you just reaching out to clinics? Are you fielding inbound inquiries? What's your role entail today?
Yeah. So, I mean, my role is to talk to doctors every day, all day, right? About their business, ask them great questions about where they're at currently, where they want to be, even presenting our model.
Yeah.
Does our model make sense? It doesn't clinically make sense to everyone. Not everyone's interested in it, but most are. Most love the idea of adding mental health therapy to a clinic. So it's really just trying to raise brand awareness about Curis and our model for patient care and the business model as well. Explain the opportunity for chiropractors. There's no other opportunity like this in chiropractic. No one else is offering shares in a company, right? No one's offering any type of equity whereby in the future, those shares will be worth more, right? I mean, you can have 100% of a small business or a small amount in a big business, and you're always going to do better having small amount of shares in a big business, right? So yeah, it's really just connecting with doctors and just raising the conversation, right? Getting them to start thinking about this long before they're ready.
Right. And so if I go through the process with Curis to come on board, what would be somebody's expectation in terms of time that it would take from start to finish, first conversation to close? Is there an average window that people should expect?
Well, do you have your financials together?
Let's say mostly yes for the sake
I'll be honest,
example.
The number one thing that slows down any type of transaction is the doctor, that the seller is unprepared. That is the number one thing that makes the deal go slow. If the seller was prepared, I mean, we could probably turn it around in 2 weeks, right? I mean, 2 or 3 weeks. If the seller was prepared with their financials, generally they're not. So, in my experience, I would say probably average is, anywhere from 6 to 10 months.
That makes sense.
And I think it's even longer sometimes if, doctors try to sell it like through a broker or something. I think it's a little bit longer.
Right. Which was actually going to be my next question. Do you guys work with brokers in the profession to, have some deal flow, or do you try to go direct mostly?
Both. I mean, we do both. Whatever works, right? But we definitely work with brokers. We love Progressive, Practice Sales. Just a little shout out to them and Crystal. I mean, they're fantastic. Yeah. They do a great job putting their business prospectus together. So when we get it and we look at it, it's very easy. It's very readable. It's fantastic. So they're great.
I'm glad to hear. Any last bits of wisdom for our listeners today?
Just start thinking about it, right? Thinking about it, start asking those questions. Like I said, make that list of what are all the things you're doing. Like, are you going to Costco and buying that stuff? Like, could someone else do that?
You're right.
What are the things that could be taken off your plate that someone else could do for you or be trained to do? Start looking at that and start working on getting your financials cleaned up, right? Like, work with your accountant, work with your bank, start getting the stuff in order so that you know those numbers. Yeah. So that you're aware of what those numbers are. So that, again, when the timing is right, you're ready and you're prepared and you're not just learning it in that moment when you're also considering what that transaction looks like.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody call Angela at Curis if you're interested in joining their wonderful team, because they are going to be $1 billion company, and you might as well jump on the rocket ship ahead of time. So that's amazing. And I love you. I love the family. I love all the work you're doing. Thank you for everything. We appreciate the time. And yeah, check Curis out. Check us out at Chiro Jobs. We'd love to help in any way we can as well. And thanks. And I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if anyone wants to reach out, you can find me on the socials, right? Facebook is there, LinkedIn, whatever. Might shoot me an email.
And your website, Curis.
The website is gocuris.com.
I'm glad I asked. Gocuris.com.
Gocuris.com. My email's arose@gocuris.com. So that's pretty easy. So yeah, Eric, thanks so much for hosting me. It's been really great to be here. Always great to connect with you and your family. I love seeing you guys out, around, and also just love what you have always done and continue to do for the profession. So
likewise,
love all that you give back and you contribute to it. So
thanks so much.